safe should be able to keep somebody in jail who is a threat to their community. That's compassionate, and it's a matter of public safety. But I also will distance myself on issues that I don't think are going to benefit Colorado. It's why I stood up with farmers and ranchers, and why I was endorsed by the Colorado Farm Bureau, because I was concerned about tariffs and their impact on Colorado's economy. It's why I support the H-2B visa, temporary visa program for agricultural workers. It's why I have said that my litmus test as governor will be, do the issues benefit Colorado positively or negatively? And if they do, I will stand with the administration. If they don't, I will fight back in Colorado's best interest. That's what you should want as a governor in the future. Thank you.
So this special interest tax giveaway that Walker is linking himself to put our nation in trillions of dollars of debt that you and your grandkids are going to have to pay for, giving away billions of your money to international corporations overseas, and it didn't do a thing for working families. And you know what? For some Colorado families, their taxes actually went up, depending on your itemized deductions over the next decade. You know what? I support real tax reform. That means going after special interest tax loopholes and using the proceeds to reduce your taxes instead of the special interest. You know, I can work with this president, and I can work with any president, Democratic or Republican, but I won't be beholden to any president, Democratic or Republican. I will always put Coloradans first. I was willing to take on President Obama on issues ranging from changes to the healthcare reform to changes to Dodd-Frank, rolling back some of the community bank regulations and public offering and capital formation ones. And yes, when President Trump scapegoats or targets certain groups or tries to increase your healthcare costs by repealing the Affordable Care Act and throwing people off of healthcare, you know that I will stand up to him on that. You know, I get the concept of what people like about what they hope President Trump would be. People want somebody that's going to fight for them, that isn't beholden to either party or the special interest. And in that area, I personally don't think President Trump has delivered. But what I want to do here in Colorado is make sure that I work for you every day of the week. I don't expect to take any PAC or special interest money. Along with our over 4,000 Coloradans, I invest alongside of them to make sure that I'm working for no one but you. Thank you.
What Congressman Polis just loudly proclaimed is that he was Bernie Sanders and Bernie Sanders had won Powerball. And what he supports is a one-size-fits-all health care policy for everybody but himself. It's why in Congress he voted to support the Affordable Care Act, the individual mandate, which is the largest tax in U.S. history. And at the same time, he seed-funded a medical tourism company to allow people that are rich to be able to fly to Mexico and Canada and Europe and elsewhere to get specialized treatments. That wasn't going to be a system that you were going to take advantage of, Congressman Polis, because you actually funded a medical tourism company to opt out. You didn't pay taxes for 5 years. What you're actually trying to do is create a system of promises for people that you can opt out of because you were worth tens of millions of dollars. That is not compassionate. That is not leadership for Colorado. That is, don't do as I say, don't do as I do, as I legislate, because I actually can afford to opt out. And that's not, and guess what? Hardworking Coloradans, they can't opt out, Congressman. They can't opt out of your empty promises. And they can't opt out when you bankrupt Colorado.
One of the things that we did with the Affordable Care Act is we took members of Congress out from their gold-plated federal plan, and we made members of Congress buy their health insurance from the exchange. Here's my Anthem Bronze card right here. That's the coverage that I have. I'm proud to buy it in Colorado Exchange. Look, I'm proud to work across the aisle with your representative, Scott Tipton, on a number of public land bills in western Colorado, with a number of other representatives like Paul Gosar in removing red tape and costs from siting renewable energy projects on public land. Proud to work on reforming and streamlining the FDA approvals process to reduce the cost of prescription drugs. We need to reduce the billion-dollar cost that drug companies have to even bring their drug to market. That's especially reflected in high costs when there's these highly personalized drugs that only work for 10,000 or 5,000 people. And I've worked on that with many Republicans, and it's a bipartisan deal. Permit any progress as a state and as a country, you have to know how to work together. So I think the time has passed for the name calling. We need a governor who's willing to roll up his sleeves.
Mr. Polis, legalized marijuana is bringing some new revenue for cities, counties, and the state, but it's also bringing the poor and homeless here to Pueblo and other cities. What is your vision for the future of the marijuana industry in Colorado?
Guess what? I am from Carnaway. Don't lose that. It's no surprise. I've been a supporter of allowing states and allowing municipalities to move forward with legalizing and regulating cannabis. I think it's safer. I think it generates tax revenue. It funds real legitimate jobs instead of criminal cartels. It can help keep drugs out of the hands of minors, and it can be part of the economic formula for success, and already is in Pueblo County, funding scholarships for young people from Pueblo, in Trinidad, helping to revitalize their own town. Now, of course, it's up to each municipality and county how to do that, and I completely support local control as a matter of principle in many areas, including in your decisions about how and when to regulate medicinal and or commercial sale of cannabis. But I fought nationally to remove the federal barriers to allow states to decide and move forward, and it creates good green jobs. And guess what? It also creates opportunities to reduce crime and reduce homelessness with some of the tax revenues. I also think that as additional states come online, a lot of the negative side we've seen will probably decrease, because yes, I think it's a legitimate concern that is argued with many communities that are citing it, which is the appropriate place to decide whether they want to have it. They're worried about attracting people for that purpose. As more areas make it legal across our country, that will be less of a concern. However you look at it, it's better to make sure it's safe and well-regulated and taxed rather than an underground market. And I believe that as a general concept as well. I was against the FDA's crackdown on kratom, which has helped so many people overcome their opioid addiction. I believe in freedom. I believe in individual liberty. I believe that you as adults will make your own decisions about what you do in your own personal life.
Well, as governor, I've talked a lot about how CBD, as the next governor, I've talked a lot about how CBD should not be classified as a Schedule I drug. I'm glad that the Farm Bill is reclassifying it. I think we have great potential around our hemp industry in Colorado and around hemp farms all throughout our state, industrial hemp and hemp that can be distilled towards drops. But I differ from Congressman Polis' radical extreme plan, because he's talked about expanding recreational drugs. I don't think that serves our kids well. In today's Colorado, it is easier for an 18-year-old kid to get a medical marijuana card than it is for him or her to get a 6-pack of beer. That doesn't work. And we have some counties that have a 50% price disparity between medical and recreational marijuana. Sheriffs in many areas of Colorado, especially in the San Luis Valley, are dealing with illegal grow operations with people who have medical cards who are growing, you can still grow up to 98 plants, who are growing hundreds of plants and trucking them out of Colorado to take advantage of a price opportunity in other states. We need to fix this regulatory system, and we need the money to go to roads. We don't need to expand it and expand recreational drugs for our kids like Congressman Polis wants to do. I don't want that future for Colorado. I think it has contributed to a lot of difficult things for law enforcement, a lot of unfunded liabilities for government, and I am not for repealing marijuana. I'm for fixing a regulatory model so that we can fix our roads. Thank you.
I want to bear myself and make a confession here tonight. I've never smoked marijuana in my life. I don't have a desire to. I hardly ever drink. I have a beer every 3 months. That's the honest truth. And you know what? I believe that making sure we regulate marijuana is a good way to keep it out of the hands of kids, because it reduces the number of drug dealers by driving out the underground market. Because you know what? That corner drug dealer doesn't care if they're selling to a 15-year-old or a 12-year-old. But you bet that just like our responsible liquor stores, our responsible marijuana dispensaries do. And I don't care if it expands or not. It's up to you in Pueblo. It's up to you in Colorado Springs. I'm not telling any state whether to have it or not. I just think it ought to be up to you. I was glad to find an area of agreement with Walker with regard to industrial hemp. I helped write those provisions in the Farm Bill that we hope to act on in the upcoming Congress. My business cards are printed on hemp paper Another great use of an industrial product which promises jobs for farmers as well as opportunity for processors and consumer product companies. So I think that like anything, of course there's pros and cons, but I think it should be in your hands rather than having a governor or a president or an attorney general who's making those decisions for you.
You vote, Mr. Stapleton?
No,
Okay.
not that I can think of.
Okay. You'll answer the next question. Governor Hickenlooper recently signed an executive order that could lead to California-style vehicle emission standards. A group of Pueblo area auto dealers, along with the Colorado Automotive Dealers Association, say the move amounts to unneeded overregulation that will drive up the cost of vehicles. Do you support the governor's executive order?
Absolutely not. And this is the difference between my plan and Congressman Polis' radical and extreme plan, which will hurt consumers in Colorado. It is why I have been supported by the Colorado Auto Dealers Association, and why I will continue to be supported by them. Because why should we as Coloradans cede regulatory authority to emissions for California? Because the Auto Dealers Association says that more than 90% of dealerships in Colorado won't sell the cars that California emission standards will mandate that they sell in the future. Because there are a maximum number of SUVs allowed in the future, which would cause one to ask if the SUV police might be impaneled to go door by door, knocking on people's door and checking that they don't have too many SUVs. Because California doesn't have as much mountainous terrain, and so they don't have as many SUVs as we have. Because the Auto Dealers Association has said that in less than 5 years, this will increase the price of automobiles by $5,000 per automobile. I will repeal this misguided executive order that Governor Hickenlooper signed in the first 24 hours of being governor. Congressman Polis will enhance it, will tell you that it's awesome, that you're going to all have solar-powered cars, and all of you will pay more than $5,000 more for your automobile and wonder what the heck just happened.
Well, again, it's just more divisive partisan rhetoric. I think in his opening sentence, Walker called Governor Hickenlooper radical and extreme. Governor Hickenlooper's a lot of things, but I don't think radical and extreme are two adjectives that apply to him or apply to me whatsoever. And yes, I do support Governor Hickenlooper's executive order in this area, because you know what? Clean air is important. Saving you money on gas is important. By having cleaner air, not only does it reduce childhood asthma, help the health of our seniors, it also reduces cancer rates and save lives. You know what? It's also not saving you money, it's a pump. $3 a gallon, right? A stranglehold, and the more efficient we can make our vehicles, the lower the operating costs, more money for you in your pocket to be able to get where you want to go on the weekends. So yes, again, I mean, listening to Walker's like a Debbie Downer, because I believe in technology. It doesn't mean that every technology will always work out. And my job as governor is to make the future work for you. And clean energy efficient vehicles, and yes, even hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles, that's part of our future. And I want to work every day to make sure that it enhances your life and saves you money.
Congressman, I was just paraphrasing Governor Hickenlooper when he called your energy plan that you just talked about pretty radical. Those aren't my words, those are Governor Hickenlooper's words. You represent a radical departure from Governor Hickenlooper. He had to beg you when you financed a 2,000-foot setback to pull it from the ballot, because he knew and I knew that it would kill 230,000 jobs and $32 billion of annual economic impact. Your health care plan is more expensive than a Democratic governor and I worked feverishly to defeat, because we knew it was going to be an empty government promise. I'll make you a deal. How many times did Paul Revere say the British are coming? A lot. Because he had to be the town crier. I don't want to be the town crier, but I got to tell the truth about your plans. If you will tell these people how you plan to pay for it, I'll stop calling you pretty radical. But until then, you are radical, extreme, and you will bankrupt Colorado, sir.
But 10 years less radical than Pueblo, because Pueblo was the first city in Colorado to launch the goal of achieving 100% renewable energy by 2030. conservative goal for the state is 10 years after Pueblo, we want to follow suit for the rest of the state. And yes, we can get it done because too many residents of Pueblo are being ripped off on energy costs and utilities. And you betcha I want to do something about it. And a big part of the solution is clean energy. Because Excel will tell you today that new wind energy costs 20% less than existing coal. And yes, we care about those jobs and the men and women that work on coal, but the sooner that we can transition to good, clean energy, the more savings you will have, and the cleaner our air will be, and we'll create those good, green jobs that can never be outsourced. Right here in Pueblo, you have 600 jobs at Vestas today. I was proud to launch my campaign in Pueblo, Colorado, when I announced I was running for governor, to highlight Pueblo leading the state in the move towards saving people money with clean, renewable energy.
Mr. Polis, Southern Colorado school districts are struggling to find money to pay for basic materials and to repair old buildings. How can the state more fairly distribute much-needed funds to communities outside the Denver metro area?
So, you know, I'm just waiting for Walker to call a 5-day school week radical and extreme. But look, I've focused for years on improving our schools. I served 6 years on the State Board of Education. I started schools, and as superintendent of New American School, we had to meet budget and try to make sure money reached the classroom to attract and retain the teachers we need to succeed. Education is about our future, the future of our economy, the future of our kids, our grandkids, and our family members, and nothing is more important. That'll be my value as governor. We need to end decades of underinvestment in our public schools and make sure every child has access to preschool and kindergarten to get a strong start, saving families money on the high cost of childcare, and making sure that kids aren't left behind just because their families can't afford the high cost of preschool and kindergarten. And yes, I think that Steve mentioned this in the question. In addition to the funding levels, there's also disparities in funding in our state. And since we're in southern Colorado and it's close to home, I'll give you an example from northern Colorado. Thompson School District, Loveland area, the starting teacher salary is $32,500. 10 minutes to the north, Poudre School District, $39,000. 10 minutes to the south, St. Vrain School District, Longmont, $39,500. So in the same area, people live in the same area, 10, 15 minutes. You have a district paying $32,500 and two that are paying $39,000. So who's going to go out and work? Who's going to apply in that district that's paying a quarter less than the others? And we have some of those same disparities in many of our small rural districts. This is why we have a plan for loan forgiveness for people that graduate with a teaching degree and teach for 5 years in one of our underserved rural districts. Some districts choose to go to 4-day or offer that as an option, but no district should be forced out of economic necessity to cut a day from the school week.
As treasurer for the last 8 years, I was proud to administer the BEST program, which allows rural school districts to fund much-needed capital improvements. And under my leadership, we made more BEST grants than any treasurer in Colorado history that allowed rural schools to build everything from gymnasiums to restrooms when they couldn't raise the money through bonding. That is the same type of leadership I plan to bring to Colorado as governor. But look, we got a problem here. Again, Congressman Polis is promising free preschool. As a father of a preschool-age kid, I want to make sure that she has every opportunity available. But I'm not going to promise something that costs $1 billion and not tell you how I'm going to pay for it. You would think if Congressman Polis was a radical innovator for education, he would support Amendment 73 for education. He doesn't. He doesn't support it, and maybe he doesn't because all of that money would be eaten up by his free preschool. I don't want 4-day school weeks for my kids. We all deserve 5-day school weeks, and we deserve more money in the classroom than we're getting in Colorado. If you look across our 178 school districts, what you find is that the number of students has grown by 6%, the number of teachers by 8%, and administrative costs have grown by 35%. 35%. That is money that you and me as parents and taxpayers and investors in the future of our public education system are spending that is not getting in the classroom where it belongs. We can do better, and we must, for the future of Colorado's education. But Congressman Polis offers a radical, empty government promise that will result in less quality education for the people who can afford it the least. That is not compassionate. That is cruel. And it will endanger Colorado's education.
First of all, you don't need to worry about Walkers and my kids in preschool and kindergarten. We're both fine and we can afford college. This is about you, not us. We need to make sure that every Colorado has the same opportunities that Walkers and my kids have because of the chance and luck and the families that they were born into. There's another thing that Walker said that I agree with. I agree with him on hemp. There's my business card. I agree with him that we need to streamline and make sure the money reaches the classroom. There's too much money that goes to administration. I'm not afraid to tie funding increases to make sure they reach the classroom, which means lower class size, higher teacher pay. That's local control. But yes, let's make sure they don't get intercepted by intermediaries or bureaucrats along the way. But when Walker cites the best grants, it's also important to note that one of the main funding sources for those best grants, and Heritage Elementary School got $289,000, Goodnight K-8 got $122,000, Pueblo 70 got over $3 million. A big source of that is your marijuana taxes. And so again, in one breath attacking the marijuana taxes and another breath talking about how important these best grants are for schools, you can't separate those two.
Does that mean you tell your kids to smoke weed for schools? Is that the idea?
We don't sanction marijuana use in our household. I've never used it, and I'm going to do everything in my power to prevent my kids from using it. As well as I'm not going to do anything to prevent them from drinking from underage. So, I mean, I think you were joking. I know that wasn't serious, but I just got, we're talking about kids and kids going on.
Mr. Stapleton, you do have a rebuttal if you like.
Well, my rebuttal is he has no way to pay for anything that he's promising. He literally has no way to pay for it. Empty, radical, extreme promises that aren't going to benefit our kids. I actually fought really hard against Amendment 64 a couple years ago because the $1 billion tax increase wasn't going to get into the classrooms where it belonged for our kids. Instead, it was going to backfill unfunded liabilities with our pension system, which I thought was a bait and switch. And I said, if the money is going to get into the classroom for our kids and improve student-teacher ratios, it should say so in the legislation, and it did not. So it was misguided. We need to fix education finance where we have some school districts in Colorado that are losing teachers at double the rate they're losing students, and yet administrative costs are going up by 40% since 2011. That is not the future of an education system that I want for my children or future generations of Coloradans. I will make sure, as governor, I did exactly what I did as treasurer. I followed the money, and I will propose that all school districts have line item transparency on where money goes for all of us as investors in the future of education for our kids.
Mr. Stapleton, we're down to our last question. Is there anything as governor that you can do to reduce the risk of school attacks and other mass shootings?
I certainly hope so. As a father of 3 school-age kids, the worst nightmare that I can imagine is going to school, sending my kids to school and having a tragedy ensue. I think we need to take a number of steps. I've said I believe that we should have a public safety officer at every school. I believe we should invest more in mental health resources. We had 2 teenagers commit suicide in our neighborhood just last week. I've talked about how medical professionals have an obligation if somebody is a danger to themselves or to their communities, to actually inform law enforcement. And yet, if you look at a number of the mass shootings, that hasn't taken place. But I am for respecting people's Second Amendment rights. And Congressman Polis, a couple years ago, supported gun legislation in Colorado that was misguided, that resulted in magpul businesses leaving Colorado. It resulted in a few hundred more background checks, but it didn't meaningfully reduce gun violence in Colorado. I want to support meaningful reduction that will actually keep our schools safer for our children. And I have practical ways to do it without trampling on people's Second Amendment rights in Colorado in the process.
I want to address, before I get to this, some of the education funding issues and how Walker Stapleton's plan will drain money from our public schools. We truly can't afford to pass 109, which would bond and take money out of our public schools. Whatever he's talking about with marijuana that he doesn't like, good or bad, takes money out of the best program that he cites. His program to create private savings accounts for the wealthy to pay for tutors and piano lessons for the kids, guess where that money comes from? It comes out of our public schools to support wealthy parents to hire tutors for their kids. On safety, we absolutely need to make sure that kids are safe in school, and as the father of a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, it's something that I feel strongly about. We need to look at the physical structure and single point entry. We need to look at making counselors available and addressing mental health issues and making sure we have a network of referrals for members of the school community that might not be having that as part of their family health care. We need to make sure that kids have somebody to talk to. And yes, of course, I support the Second Amendment. I support our right to bear arms. And you know what? The vast majority of hunters and sportsmen and women and people who have guns for home safety also support common sense measures that improve safety. Like making sure that there's a red flag law, which is a way that through a judicial and fair process, if somebody's having a mental health crisis, they can temporarily lose access to their guns and of course have that restored when they've restored their health. We need a better security in our gun stores because there's been over 400 guns taken through smash and grab. We don't even know where those went to. Of course there was no background check, universal or otherwise, and we need to take those security improvements carefully. I think again, of course we need to work with sportsmen and hunters and responsible gun owners and law-abiding Coloradans to find a way that we can, yes, protect our cherished Constitution and Second Amendment rights, and at the same way move forward with gun safety that affects all of our lives and makes us all safer.
Mr. Stapleton?
No.
Okay. Mr. Polis, anything on that topic? Okay. We'll now have closing remarks. You may recall that Mr. Polis won the coin toss and elected to conclude tonight. So we'll begin with closing remarks from Walker Stapleton.
Thank you very much for having me down to Pueblo. Jenna, thank you for coming. I'm running for governor for my 3 kids, Craig, Coco, and Olivia, and all of Colorado's future generations. I am running to make sure that we have a Colorado where economic opportunities abound, where we can have individuals start and grow business and recognize their economic dreams. As treasurer, I have worked collaboratively with Democrats on some of the most important economic policy pieces of legislation that we passed during my time as treasurer. I've provided county treasurers relief when one of the main ratings agencies downgraded U.S. Treasury bonds. I've increased the transparency and accountability across government agencies when it comes to issuing taxpayer-funded debt. We need that transparency for our Department of Transportation. We don't have it. And we need it for our Department of Higher Education, so that every time there's a downtick in our budget, we don't raid money from higher education at a time when students can least afford it. As governor, I will make sure that we fund our infrastructure because Colorado's future economic plans depend on it. It's why I've come up with a plan to do just that, where we have dedicated sources of revenue in the general fund. It's why I've come up with a plan to improve access and affordability to health care by investing in mental health, by making sure that young people who are paying more for health insurance than they are for their home mortgages or their rent can get access to high deductible plans for catastrophic health insurance with low premiums. It's why I've worked with people that are on the front lines of Medicaid expansion. It's why I believe that the values that all of us care about in Colorado, of clean air to breathe, and streams that we can fish with our kids and grandkids in summer, and mountains that we can hike, are not mutually exclusive from having a responsible, transparent, and accountable energy industry. We must have both for Colorado's economic future because the energy industry contributes 230,000 jobs to Colorado. 100,000 Latinos work in the energy industry in Colorado, and we cannot survive if the energy industry leaves Colorado. Congressman Polis has promised again and again, this is our 4th debate, $90 billion of spending. His renewable energy plan, an independent analysis, said it would cost $45 billion. That's 150% the size of our budget. His education plan for preschool, there's another $1 billion. Then he's talked about a health care plan that 2 years ago was $25 billion, the size of our entire budget. He wants to propose health care that's more expensive.